Okay. Because not running away is great. Understanding why we do what we do, really getting like our head around that, I think is so important. But then, like, now that you have that information, now what are you going to do with it? Well, hey, friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited to be with you today, doing part two of what I started on the last episode of ways that like unhealed trauma and pain are showing up in your business today. So I just want to review just a tiny bit from the last episode. I do want you to go back and listen to that. On the last episode, I talked about just the fact that there's so many ways that I see women respond to things that they have not healed from in their life. And it shows up in business over and over and over. And when you have things in your business that you tend to do, or you respond to people in a certain way, or you can't figure out why you always do that one thing, or why every time this happens, do you do that? Sorry, I'm adjusting my chair and all the things on YouTube, and I apologize. Um, I think that it is so helpful, so beneficial. There is so much fruit that can come from just pausing and being like, why do I do this? Why am I the way I am? Why do I get easily triggered by this? Why do I stop when I'm growing? Why do I not respond to emails that somebody sends me that, could be an opening or, an in? Like, there's so many things in business that we do or don't do based out of previous experiences, perhaps pain or trauma that came from those. And I think the first thing we have to do is recognize that we have a certain behavior or lack of behavior that's no longer working for us. It kind of feels like Dr. Phil. Remember when Dr. Phil used to say to people all the time, like, and how's that working out for you? Right. So if it's no longer working out for you, or if in fact it's never worked out for you, I think we need to examine why. But that's only part of it. I think understanding why we behave the way we do is part of it, but then being willing to be brave enough to say, and I no longer want to do this. Therefore, I'm going to do the work required. I'm going to get the help that I need. I'm going to, have somebody pray, or I'm going to pray, or whatever it is, to get past that, to deal with that, to get healed from that, so that you are not living in and making decisions out of things that happened to you and hurt or were traumatizing in the past. Does that make sense? And so, with as many women as I have coached in business, I see things over and over and over in business that I know in my knower are a result of something else. And if I can get a woman into my one on one coaching, I can usually have conversations with her where it's a back and forth, and we're getting to the bottom of some stuff, and we're figuring out why you always do the thing that you do. Why can't you raise your prices? Why, whenever your mother in law says something about your cute little business, do you feel offended? Why are you having a hard time hiring? Felt like we can get to the bottom of those things when I'm working with women one on one. But there's a lot of you that we may never work together in that capacity. And I want what's best for you and your family and your business. And I want for you to have the freedom to do all the things that God has for you on this side of heaven. And for a lot of you, it's growing a business. It's getting impact and income from said business. It's allowing that income and impact to be a blessing to others. It's giving people jobs. It's employing people. It's changing industries, etc. But if you can't get over and get past some stuff, that's going to hinder all of that from happening. Now, there's a lot of times people will come to me and they think they don't have any stuff, and I would like to push back because we all have stuff. I also think it's important to say that not all stuff is trauma. Okay, we all have pain at some capacity from our childhood, from our upbringing, from people in said childhood upbringing, et cetera. Pain doesn't always equal trauma. I think we just need to establish that. But I do think that there are plenty of people walking around in the world who do have had traumatic experiences, or who responded to things that were very traumatic to them, for them. And at the end of the day, I think it's important to know that I am not any sort of a therapist. I am not any sort of a counselor. I don't even really know what the heck I'm talking about, other than God has really graced me with the ability to usually see what's going on behind what somebody says is going on. Um, I think therapy has its place, friends. Jason and I were talking to one of our kids just this morning, actually on our way to church, that about the different times we've gone to therapy For our marriage, I'm in therapy right now for some things totally outside of the marriage, just some things that I still need to heal from, things that I thought that I was past. And whether it's pain or whether it's trauma or whether it's, just still having big feelings about things that we have gone through, I want to get past them. I don't want things tripping me up today. And so if you're finding yourself being tripped up by things in business, I hope you'll go back and you'll listen to episode 1. I hope you'll remember that I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm a business coach who does have a certification in life coaching, and I hear from the Holy Spirit. And so I hope that this is life changing for somebody that listens today. So this is part 2 of the series about pain and trauma, and I wanted to start out with a quote, and then I want to add to said quote. Can I do that? So I saw on Instagram years ago. Let me see if I can even tell you when I saw that. Oh, I already erased the date. Okay, no worries. But it was on an account called Shannon Kaiser Writes. But here's what the quote was. And I only know, I have no idea, like how many years. I see now. I actually screenshotted this on my birthday, July 29th in 2023. Here's what her post was. The degree to which a person can grow is in direct proportion to the amount of truth that they can accept about themselves without running away. Okay. And I think that's really good. I'm going to read it again, and then I'm going to add some more of my words to it that I think makes it even more powerful. The degree to which you and I'm going to ad lib here, can grow in our business is in direct proportion to the amount of truth that you and I can handle about ourselves without running away. Okay. What I want to add to that is, and the degree to which you and I are willing to fix it or be healed from it. Okay. Because not running away is great. Understanding why we do what we do, really getting like our head around that, I think is so important. But then, like, now that you have that information, now what are you going to do with it? Because you've still got to not only not run away from it, but you have to like fix it, heal from it, or change course going forward. Okay. Because God never leaves us the way we are, as in his goodness. So, what I want to talk about today is self-sabotage in business. And before you're like, I don't self-sabotage, friend, there are so many different situations, examples of self-sabotage that I want to give you in business, because again, maybe you don't. And if you don't, that's great. But you probably know somebody who does. And I want you to forward this podcast series to that person. Okay. But I do think that a lot of times women don't even realize that they're doing it. And, it's one of those things where sometimes we just can't see the forest for the trees. We all have blind spots. This is why we need accountability. This is why we need, somebody to kind of mirror some things for us. This is why we need good friends. This is why we need honest spouses. This is why we need children that are sometimes honest to a fault, right? Or is it just my kids that actually call mom out on all my stuff? Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just all my kids, not you, Easton. Easton's here editing this podcast for YouTube right now. But no, I'm kidding. Easton does it too. And but it's good that we have sounding boards and people that can and do care about us enough to not let us stay stuck. Okay. So I wanted to first of all just define what self-sabotage is. It's behaviors or thoughts, especially those that are involuntary or unconscious in nature, that are harmful to your best interest or development. Okay, let me say that again. Self-sabotage is having thoughts or behavior, especially those that are involuntary or unconscious in nature. I mean, you don't even realize you're doing it half the time, that are harmful to your own interest or development. All right. So when I ask a woman if she feels like she's self-sabotaging in business, the majority of the time a woman's going to say no. I'm not self-sabotaging. And I think because to some degree, we almost can equate things that we do to self-sabotage. We can almost think, well, I don't do that, therefore I'm not self-sabotaging. So I just want to give you guys some different context and examples. And I'm only talking about self-sabotage on this podcast episode today. I'm actually going to talk about 4 or 5 other ones on part 3, because I think that this one literally deserved like its own podcast episode all by its own self. Okay. So self-sabotage is not laziness. It is usually self-protection. Self-sabotage can look like procrastinating, for instance. So you don't make a decision, you don't make a decision, you don't make a decision. If you listen to part 1, I told you that I can often determine how fast a woman is going to grow in business by her ability to quickly make decisions. If she or he cannot be a quick decision maker, it's usually going to prevent business growth. It just does. And so, self-sabotage may be that you are procrastinating. Self-sabotage may be that you just are refusing to make a decision. But here's the thing I know about self-sabotage. It can often be that we self sabotage because your nervous system is trying to protect you from something that it perceives as danger. Listen, God designed the body in such a wild, wild way. And again, not a neurosurgeon, not a neuroscientist, none of those things. You can go listen to my friend Dr. Shannon for all of that. But if your brain perceives something as danger, God wired your brain to like warning bells all over the place. So this is why when you stand on the edge of a cliff and you look over, your brain is like firing danger, danger, step back, right? If I'm looking into the face of a bear, danger, 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 leave, run, step back, get out of here, okay? Also, when you're on the brink of something like happening in your business, that can feel like the unknown. Your nervous system and your brain can almost perceive that as danger. If you're trying to be you're trying to grow your business, for instance, and you have some decisions that need to be made. Sometimes you can't make decisions because any decision feels like it could be like danger, danger. And again, it's like in your knower that you're not going to die doing an Instagram story. But because you don't have a comfort level with it, it's something you haven't done before. You're not used to showing your face on social media. Maybe you are wanting to hide. You don't want to be visible. That is an unhealed pain and trauma response that I talked about on part one. But so you're feeling like you're making too big of a deal at just showing your face on an Instagram story, and yet you cannot do it. And this is why, because your brain is equating it to danger. It's up to us, by the way, to really like let our brain know this is not danger. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's bad. Just because I'm not comfortable doesn't mean I should stop. So a lot of self-sabotage, it's not laziness, it's because of self-protection. Let me give you an example. If in the past you had attention that led to rejection or that led to criticism, sometimes now your brain can equate things like growing your business to being unsafe. So you unconsciously stall, you unconsciously like shrink back, you say no to things that you really do want to do. But it's because in the past you've had such a bad experience with things that you're self-sabotaging now. Listen, self-sabotage a lot of times makes us think that we have some control over how things are going to go down. And that's not really the case, by the way, but often we will self sabotage because it's at least we're in control, or we feel like we are, of what's about to happen going forward. At least we're not leaving the control up to others, up to chance, up to God, up to luck, up to time, or whatever. At least we are controlling the narrative by self sabotaging now. And so, if you are someone who has experienced a lot of pain in life and who hasn't, or if you have experienced trauma, it can almost like wire you in a way to just start like expecting loss. It's like you set your expectations so low that then you're not going to be disappointed by it. Does that make sense? How many of you feel like you actually do that? If I just don't expect the best out of anyone, then I won't be disappointed. If I just don't expect this to work out, then I can't be disappointed, right? So if you are someone who self-sabotages, you will actually almost unconsciously, like involuntarily, go ahead and make decisions and do things that start making things head in that direction now. Because this way, at least you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. At least you're not waiting for somebody else to have control. You're self-sabotaging right now because then it feels as though you have some control over what's happening. There's a lot that goes into self-sabotage. It almost wires you to like expect loss, and therefore you almost want to get ahead of it. So you like unconsciously create it. Again, not a brain person. This is not my forte. I just am being as obedient as possible in doing this podcast series. And if it only helps one woman, then my job here is done. So if you are someone whose past has taught you that good things don't last, or the rug tends to get pulled out from under you, that would be me, by the way, or that things can't keep going so good for so long, anybody else, or that the other shoe has to almost be about to drop, then you may self sabotage on some things in business, even if it's going well. Because what happens is when things are going too good, sometimes it feels so unfamiliar that it really does feel like too good to be true. And you're like, something's going to happen to jack this up. Let me just go ahead and unconsciously and voluntarily jack some stuff up in like advance of that, just so that I can control the narrative a little bit. Let me give you some real life business examples, okay? So like in business, maybe you find your engagement on social media really growing, and then all of a sudden you just find yourself, okay, you're not posting on social media for a while. And the truth is, like, you're wondering, like, what the heck am I doing? Things have been going really well. Why when things are going really well do I tend to back off? This is a perfect example. Maybe you just had a really successful launch of a program, of a coaching package, of a, new line of, I'm thinking of golf polos for Jason or something. But you stop showing up after a really great launch, or maybe you just don't relaunch again. I've had women come into my coaching programs before, and I'll ask them, okay, when's the last time you launched that program, or when's the last time you, told people you have a new product, or when's the last time? And they'll be like, oh, it was 6 months ago. And I'll be like, how did it do? It did actually really great. I had 20 people sign up. I made, $10,000. It was really great. Da, da, da. I'm like, okay, so why haven't you done it again? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I mean, do you not need another $10,000 right now? Yeah, I do. Well, then, okay, so what's the problem? And so this is a perfect example of like something that went well, and then you just refuse to do it again. And you don't even you do, it's like you can't really figure out why did I just do that? Let me give you a real life example. My friend Carrie Robena, who just turned 50 this week. Shout out to Carrie. She's one of my best business buddies. I met her in a mastermind a decade ago. So, and Carrie has given me permission to share this story. Carrie and I met in Sandy Krakowski's mastermind. I have a podcast episode about Sandy Krakowski that's either coming out right before or right after this series on pain and trauma. So go listen to that if you haven't. She was my first business coach, and I met Carrie in her business mastermind. Okay, so anyway, Sandy's at one point, what she was uber focused on was Facebook growth and Facebook ads being one of the pieces of Facebook growth. And she was one of the first people that taught me really well how to do ads, how to grow on Facebook, et cetera. And so Carrie and I were both running ads. We were both, posting, regularly like we were supposed to be, et cetera. And Carrie had an ad that was working so well for her on Facebook for quite a while. And it was like, because back in the day, so like I'm 900 years old, but used to be able to get like a new like on Facebook for like 5 to 10 cents. Some of you don't, you're so green, which is totally fine. You don't even know what that means. But essentially now we run ads to get people to sign up for things, whether it's a free thing or something that you have opened, right? But back in the day, we used to run ads to get more followers. And so it would show up as somebody like suggested for people to follow. I would show up in your Facebook feed as you should follow Jennifer Allwood's, business advice if you don't. And then you could click follow or just keep scrolling. But back in the day, we could get people to start following us for 5 to 10 cents, which was a deal. Okay. And then you try to sell to them after that. So anyhow, Carrie had gained she'd gotten like 20,000 Facebook followers through her ads. And then she turned her ads off. And I remember asking her, why did you turn your ads off? And she's like, I don't know, it just was freaking me out. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? And so essentially the ad was doing so well that her Facebook page numbers were growing, that she got to a certain point where like that was her threshold for comfortability. 20,000 followers. She shut those things off. And I was like, Carrie, she's like, I know, and by the way, throwing no shade on Carrie, because I've done plenty of those things, just, not in that capacity. I don't turn off Facebook ads when they're doing well, but I've done plenty of other things to self-sabotage a business. So like that is a really good example. If you've had somebody that's ever told you, hey, you want to do a collaboration, like get a hold of me after this home show or after this, and you never do. even though you know it could be a winner chicken dinner. Or maybe somebody's like, hey, I would love to invite you to speak on stage at, this next event, and you never respond to the email. Like a lot of times women will almost create chaos to self-sabotage to match their internal state, or they'll just ignore invitations, which is self-sabotage. They will turn things off. They will stop momentum. Those are all examples of self-sabotage. There is, if a woman feels like she is not safe being seen or being successful, a lot of times they'll instinctively self sabotage. They won't finish what they start. They'll constantly keep changing what they offer. Those of you who are like, I can't decide. And then you finally like launch something and it does whatever it does, but then you change and then you do that for just a minute and then you change and then you do that for just a minute and you change. Like you can't settle on anything. I do think that to a degree, that is a form of self-sabotage because you're never going to get any momentum that way, ever. Some of you, I think, intentionally hire the wrong help just so you can continue telling people that there's nobody good out there to be hired. And just so then you have to fire people and you're like self sabotaging the growth of the company by almost, hiring intentionally people won't work out. You launch and then you disappear. I think deep down, a lot of times, success can feel really threatening because you're afraid of being judged for success. You're afraid of feeling left out for success. You're afraid of publicly failing. You're afraid of not being able to continue, to do whatever helped with the success, or that you just can't deliver. And so you self sabotage instead. And here's another part of self sabotage that I want to talk for just a second, okay? And of course, this doesn't apply to me and it doesn't apply to you, but this maybe applies to somebody that no, that's me. That's being sarcastic. Okay, listen. Have you ever thought about like so and so, that from church, or maybe it's a friend of yours, or maybe it's a family member who just constantly like has drama in their world, so much drama, where they're always on the struggle bus. And you wonder, like, why does this person keep going back to these awful relationships? Well, let me tell you one of the reasons why. Because people that have gone through substantial pain or they've gone through traumatic situations, they often will choose what is familiar over what is new, even if familiar is bad. I talked about this in Fear is Not the Boss of You, in my book that came out years ago, but it's still as good today as it was then. Women sometimes will pick the thing that they know is not the best for them, but it's the thing that they know over the thing that is the unknown, that to the rest of us is the obvious choice. What are you doing? Being in another relationship with the same guy like the last guy, but it's like that saying, it's the devil you know. Women will pick familiarity. That's a hard word, familiarity, over something that is new, potentially, what do I want to say? Well, there's a lot that comes with something being new, with the unknown. So a lot of times women will just stick with what they know, even if it's not good for them. You don't follow like a proven plan from a business coach, such as myself, because you have some weird thinking in your brain that success has to be earned through suffering and through struggle and whatever else. It's going back to the same thing over and over and over, and it's a pattern. And if that's you, I want you to know, listen, you got to get that fixed because God's yoke is easy. His burden is light. I know that you think by continuing down the same patterns that you've gone down a million times before, that it's giving you the illusion of control, but it's never taking you to the place that you want to end up. It's just not. It's just not. And so there has got to be some healing in this area so that you stop resisting the very thing that you say with your lips that you actually want. If you want success in your business, you want freedom from your business, you want income from your business, but you never have felt safe to like have nice things, have money in the bank account, you will instinctively do things to push them away. This is another thing. I don't know what just happened, friends, if you're watching on YouTube, that I'm literally like rubbing my eyeball right now, but all of a sudden I got an itch in my eye. I have worked with so many business owners that were making great money and were giving away the majority of it. Not because they It was a religious thing, not because they were tithing it, not because God told them to, but because they felt so weird about having dollars in the bank that they just self-sabotaged by getting rid of all of it. Overspending, giving it away, donating to things they didn't need to, spending it as fast as it came in. Like that is a real sign. That is a total way business women self-sabotage. And so when it comes to growth, understanding ourselves, all those things, we first have to know why we do what we do. And then we've got to not only understand why we're doing it, but we've got to get healed from it. Self-sabotage allows you to predict what's going to happen, which gives you an illusion of self-control. If you're someone that struggles with control, I just want you to look at all the examples I just gave and determine, am I self-sabotaging my business in any way? Could I have a business coach and I just continue to refuse to? Almost as a way not to grow. Could I actually be growing on social media if I would continue to post, but I just don't, and I don't know why I can't make myself? Have you turned off your ads? Have you had a successful launch and then never launched again? Like, examine. Because if you can, first of all, examine what it is and determine what it is that you actually do. And then if you can get to the root of why you actually do it, of where it's coming from, that is, I think, half the battle, friends. And then get some help. Talk to a counselor, pray, have somebody pray over you. If you're in one of my coaching groups, we have prayer time every single month. And so come to one of the war room calls. I will pray over you. The women in there all have things, because that's the thing. Like, none of us are without junk. None of us are without stuff. And it's the stuff that's carrying over. It's unhealed, it's undealt with, and it's carrying over into your business. For those of you that are really on the struggle bus in business, I encourage you just to examine why and figure out how to get healed. Because the sooner you can do that, the better chance you have of your business actually being successful and changing your life in terms of impact and income on this side of heaven. So if you didn't listen to part 1 of this, I encourage you to go back and listen. This is obviously part 2. Part 3 is coming up. Part 3 is about imposter syndrome. Part 3 is about hyper independence. Part 3 is about overworking, micromanagement, lots of things like that. So make sure you tune in for the next episode. If you have never subscribed to my podcast, please just hit subscribe on here. If you've never given me a podcast review, please give me a podcast review. If you want to know how you and I can work together, go to jenniferallwood.com. There's 2 ways that we can work together right now. You can go to equip360.com. That'll be on jenniferallwood.com. You can sign up for my monthly coaching and software there, or I have a Voxer coaching package. That's a 3 months package with me. It's like a one-on-one with myself and my team type of coaching. I just want you to know that, like, I'm praying for you. I'm praying that you deal with whatever needs dealt with so that you can fully enjoy and have on this side of heaven all that God wants you to, which is a lot of freedom. And man, when you are your freest, most healed self, I believe that anything is absolutely possible. I really do. So I'm rooting for you, my friends. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.
Easton, what got in my eyeball? I don't know.